The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive Timelines members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The gasp. Air floods his lungs with a violence that has nothing to do with respirators or filtration systems. Real air. Unprocessed, unregulated, tasting faintly of ozone and stone and something floral he can't immediately name. His chest expands on its own. The sound it makes is his own breathing, his own wet animal lungs, with no mechanical rhythm underneath it. The absence of that rhythm is the most disorienting thing he has ever experienced in either life. He looks down. Hands, 2 of them. Unscarred, the fingers are slender and pale, the knuckles unbruised, the nails trimmed. He flexes them slowly, one at a time, and feels each tendon respond without hydraulic assist. Something in him breaks very quietly at the sensation. He closes both fists, opens them, closes them again. The reflection comes from a viewport to his left. Viewport, not viewport screen. Actual transparent steel, giving onto a corridor of humming machinery and industrial light. The face looking back at him is 25 years old, sharp-jawed, with 2 parallel braids framing features he recognizes from 1,000 holos. From briefings. From the file he had studied with obsessive, self-hating precision across 2 decades, trying to understand the man he had erased. Obi-Wan Kenobi looks back at him from the glass. He breathes through it. The disorientation is total and he breathes through it anyway. Because Darth Vader survived Mustafar, and whatever this is, it is not Mustafar. Where? He needs where. The machinery around him hums in a key he knows. The architecture of the corridor, the Naboo aesthetic, organic curves, softened into industrial function, places him immediately. The smell of ozone strengthens. He can hear, from somewhere beyond the sealed blast door to his right, the unmistakable crack and sizzle of lightsabers. He knows this fight. He knows exactly how it ends. Through the energy field ahead, one of 3 ray shields segmenting this corridor, the middle one already cycling down. He sees them. Qui-Gon Jinn moves in the way he always moved in the training holos. Fluid, unhurried, with the particular patience of a man who has already accepted whatever outcome the Force decides. Against him, a horned figure in black and red spins and drives and presses, with a ferocity that looks less like dueling and more like weather. Darth Maul. His brother in darkness, technically, his predecessor in service to a master who considered both of them blunt instruments to be used and discarded. The middle shield drops. Qui-Gon steps into the chamber. The door seals between them. He watches. He cannot stop it. The physics of the shields are already determined, the timing already set, and he is standing in the wrong segment, with no way through. Qui-Gon doesn't die fast. That's the part the accounts never conveyed. He fights Maul longer than anyone without future knowledge would expect, inside the generator chamber with its lethal drop and its tight geometry. And he fights him with the full patience of his form converted into something almost resigned, like a man who is finishing a task rather than fighting for his life. Vader watches this and understands it for the first time. Then the saber finds the gap below the sternum. Then Qui-Gon Jinn falls to his knees. The 3rd shield drops. He doesn't run. Running is Obi-Wan's memory talking. He walks, and the walk is Vader's. And when Maul turns to face him from across the pit with the crimson blade still wet, the Sith apprentice does something Vader has read about but never witnessed. He smiles. He stops smiling in the second exchange. Vader doesn't fence. He doesn't parry. Parrying is a philosophy built on patience and attrition, on the assumption that if you survive long enough, your opponent will make a mistake. He has no interest in surviving long enough. He closes the distance inside Maul's first attack, inside the reach of that double blade, and drives forward with Jem So's full weight behind a 2-handed strike that has no business existing in a body that has spent 13 years drilling defensive form. The blade locks. He breaks the lock with his shoulder, not his wrist. Steps in. The second exchange lasts 4 seconds. The third lasts 2. Maul goes back 3 steps. His confidence, which has been the permanent weather of every movement since this duel began, goes somewhere else. His yellow eyes track something in Obi-Wan's footwork that doesn't belong to the file he has on this Jedi. And for the first time in a duel that should have already been won, Darth Maul processes fear. "You're fighting," he starts. He doesn't finish. The fourth exchange ends it. Maul loses his balance at the pit's edge, and Vader doesn't extend the moment. No posturing, no final words. He severs the blade staff at the emitter housing with a precise diagonal cut and lands a force push that is, by any measure, far beyond what a Padawan on the verge of his knighthood should be capable of. Maul drops into the dark without completing the sentence. The generator hum fills the silence. He turns. Qui-Gon Jinn is not dead yet. He is sitting against a wall with one hand pressed to his chest and the specific expression of a man who is still choosing to be present for whatever comes next, through an act of pure will. His eyes find Obi-Wan crossing the chamber toward him, and something in them registers a confusion he is too disciplined to speak immediately. Vader drops to his knees at his side. Up close, Qui-Gon is older than the holos made him look. There are lines around his eyes that speak of something heavier than age. His breathing is careful and deliberate, each inhale a negotiation. "You fight," Qui-Gon says after a moment, "like someone I've never met." I know. He doesn't try to explain it. There is no explanation available to him that would survive contact with a dying man's remaining minutes. He takes Qui-Gon's free hand in both of his, in Obi-Wan's hands, unscarred and warm, and holds it. I know. Obi-Wan. The name lands like a question. I'm here. Qui-Gon studies his face with the patient attention of a man who spent 40 years reading the Force in the faces of those around him. Whatever he finds there, it doesn't frighten him. It seems, if anything, to settle something. "The boy," he says. "I know. Promise me." "I promise." His voice breaks on it. Actual grief, not performed. Obi-Wan's love for this man is still present in the body he's wearing, accessible and real, and his own decades of hindsight sit on top of it like a stone. "I promise you, I will not fail him. Not this time." Qui-Gon doesn't ask what he means by "not this time." He simply nods, once with the particular piece of a man who has decided to trust a thing larger than he can see. Then, he is gone. Somewhere deeper in the palace, blaster fire fades in uneven stutters towards silence. Amidala's forces retaking the throne room. History reasserting itself in all the ways it is still supposed to. He can hear the distant sounds of a battle becoming a victory. Crowd noise bleeding in from the streets, the particular chaotic joy of a world discovering it has survived. He stays on his knees, he looks at his hands, Obi-Wan's hands, holding Obi-Wan's grief, containing Anakin Skywalker's entire archive of consequence, and then at the inert casing of the lightsaber on the floor beside him. Its blade housing, reflecting a version of a face he doesn't own. He has burned worlds. He has choked officers in conference rooms for the crime of delivering honest information. He has stood at the Emperor's right hand and called it loyalty. He has done things for which there is no word that doesn't collapse under the weight of what it would need to describe. The Force has put him here, in this corridor, in this body, with this grief, and left him no instructions. He understands. He doesn't deserve instructions. He deserves exactly this: an impossible mercy, handed to a man who spent decades proving he didn't warrant it, in exchange for a lifetime of earning it back one choice at a time. He breathes. He closes his eyes. He makes no promises to himself, because he has learned what his promises are worth. He makes only one decision, quiet and absolute, in the hum of the generator room with a dead man beside him and a 9-year-old boy somewhere in this city who doesn't yet know his name. He will spend every day of this second life becoming someone that boy deserves. He gets to his feet. He picks up Qui-Gon's lightsaber. He walks toward the door. The funeral pyre burns at dusk. Qui-Gon Jinn's body takes the flame the way the man himself received everything, without resistance, without spectacle. The Naboo sky above Theed turns the color of cooling iron, and the smoke rises straight in the still evening air. And Vader stands at the edge of the gathered mourners with his hands folded and his face composed, and his grief locked somewhere below the sternum where no one can read it. Mace Windu stands 6 feet to his left. Yoda, 3 feet further. He is aware of both of them the way a man is aware of 2 loaded weapons, set carefully on a shelf. Not threatening. Not yet. But present in a way that demands the peripheral vision. He has been in this body for less than 12 hours. He is already being watched. Mace's attention is not obvious. It never is. But Vader spent 2 decades studying the most dangerous men in 2 galaxies, and he knows surveillance when he feels it, and what he feels from Mace Windu right now is the quiet, methodical attention of a man filing discrepancies. Obi-Wan is not mourning the way he should. Too still, too composed. The grief is real, he can feel it himself. Obi-Wan's love for Qui-Gon present in the body's memory like a bruise, but it reads, from the outside, like an old man burying a friend rather than a 25-year-old Padawan burying the only father he has ever known. Mace notices. He says nothing. He files it. Yoda doesn't look at him directly at all, which is worse. The pyre burns down. The crowd disperses in the quiet, purposeful way of people who have other grief to attend to. He stays until the last ember fades, because Obi-Wan would have, and because he owes Qui-Gon Jinn at least that much. The victory celebration finds its voice in the palace courtyard by full dark. Naboo does ceremony the way it does everything, beautifully, earnestly, with a commitment to the aesthetic that would read as excessive anywhere else, and here reads only as sincere. Colored lights string between the columns. Music drifts from somewhere inside. The people of Theed move through the gardens with the particular looseness of a population that was, 18 hours ago, occupied, and is now not, and hasn't yet decided how to feel about the distance between those 2 states. He finds a bench near a fountain in the eastern garden, and sits, and waits, and watches the celebration happen around him the way weather happens, present, continuous, not requiring his participation. He is watching for a specific face. He sees it before he hears it. A small figure navigating the crowd with the careful deliberateness of a child who has learned to move through spaces where he doesn't quite belong, reading the gaps between adults, keeping his shoulders small, taking up as little room as possible. The habit of a boy who spent 9 years as someone's property, calculating the geometry of every room he entered. The boy is 9 years old. He has his mother's eyes, and the particular quality of stillness that comes not from peace but from long practice at containing everything that isn't safe to show. Even here, even in the middle of a celebration, there is a watchfulness to him that has no business being in a child's face. Vader's chest does something he doesn't have a word for. He has studied this face in holos and in memory, and in the mirror of his own reflection across decades of self-hatred. He has carried this face like a sentence. He knows every version of it. The earnest Padawan, the volatile knight, the devastated husband. The thing that woke up screaming on the medical table on Mustafar and called itself Darth Vader for the next 23 years. He knows what this face becomes. He knows what it doesn't have to become. One of Padme's handmaidens guides the boy through the crowd toward him, and the boy sees him, and stops. Children are perceptive in ways adults train themselves out of. The boy reads something in the way he's sitting, or in the quality of the attention being paid to him, which is absolute and unguarded in a way that adults almost never direct at children, and he goes still in the particular way that means he is processing rather than retreating. Vader stands. Then, deliberately, he steps down off the low platform the bench is set on, and lowers himself to one knee. The handmaiden's step falters. Behind him, from somewhere he doesn't look, he hears the quiet intake of breath that means someone with Jedi training has registered an anomaly. Jedi do not kneel to greet children. It's not a rule that's written anywhere. It doesn't need to be. It's simply outside the behavioral vocabulary, and he has just stepped outside it in front of witnesses, and he doesn't care even slightly. He is eye level with the boy now. Anakin Skywalker looks at him with Padme's eyes and says nothing. Waiting, "I am so sorry," he says, "that it took me this long to find you." The boy's brow pulls together. Not suspicion. Confusion, the genuine, undefended confusion of a child encountering a sentence that doesn't parse. "You don't even know me." "I know you," he says. and his voice is doing something he didn't authorize. Something that belongs to the grief in the body's memory, and the grief he brought here himself, layered and indistinguishable from each other now, better than anyone in this galaxy ever will. Anakin studies him. 9 years old, formerly enslaved, raised in a desert at the edge of Republic space, Force-sensitive in a way that has made him alien to every peer he's ever had, this boy has been read and assessed and evaluated by adults his entire life. He knows what it feels like to be examined. He is not being examined right now, and he knows it. Something in his small face goes uncertain in a way that has nothing to do with doubt. He steps forward, and Vader opens his arms, and the boy walks into them. He pulls him close, completely without the careful Jedi reserve that keeps bodies at a respectful distance, without any of the institutional management that the Order has always applied to its most volatile and powerful and frightened members. The boy's head fits under his chin. He can feel the child's heart beating fast against his chest, and then, incrementally, beginning to slow. The handmaiden has stopped moving. Padme herself nearby, he registers her presence now. The soft sound of her stopping mid-step is watching in silence. Anakin's hands find the back of his robe. Hold on. I never. The boy starts. And stops. Starts again. Smaller. My mom holds me like this. Nobody else ever. He doesn't finish. He doesn't need to. Vader closes his eyes and holds Anakin Skywalker in the garden on Naboo, with the celebration moving around them, and he allows himself 30 seconds of something he can't name and doesn't try to, because naming it would require him to be calmer than he is. 30 seconds. Then he loosens his hold gently, and the boy steps back, and his eyes are dry but barely, and he is looking at Obi-Wan Kenobi, with an expression no one will ever see on Darth Vader's face, because Darth Vader's face is hidden under a mask. But Vader knows it, because he has felt it from the inside. It is the expression of something that has been braced against the cold for so long that warmth registers as almost painful. He finds Padme 20 minutes later, near the palace's inner arcade. She is still watching him. She has been watching him since the garden, with the focused intelligence of a woman who became head of state at 14, and has spent every year since learning to read what people are not saying. He meets her eyes, and lets her look. What happens to him now? He asks. No preamble. Officially, once the council has decided. Her chin lifts slightly, the shift of a woman who has been asked a logistical question when she expected something else. That depends on the council. The council, he says, will resist. She studies him. You seem very certain of that. I am certain of very little. He looks back toward where the boy was, the empty space in the crowd where Anakin stood a few minutes ago. But I am certain of that. Padme follows his gaze, and when she speaks again, her voice has changed register, less political, more direct. And if they refuse? He turns back to her, and whatever she finds in his expression settles something in her own, because she stops asking the question before he answers it. She already knows. He will not let it happen. The specifics of how are a problem for the council chamber, which comes next, and he is not a man who wastes energy on battles not yet joined. But he will not let it happen. The fountain runs on behind them in the warm Naboo night, and somewhere in the city a boy with his mother's eyes is looking up at a sky full of stars and feeling, for the first time in recent memory, like someone is standing between him and the dark. The council chamber at the top of the Jedi Temple is a circle of light and silence. 12 seats arranged in a ring, half of them occupied by bodies in the room, and half by flickering holographic presences beamed in from across the Republic. Morning sun comes through the curved windows at a low angle, filling the chamber with the kind of clean, directionless gold that makes everything look certain. The temple's spires rise outside the glass, 10,000 years of institutional confidence made architecture. Vader has stood in this room as a supplicant, as an equal, as a conqueror, in the nightmare version of events he is here to prevent. He knows every sightline, every chair, every face currently arranged in the careful neutrality that Jedi Masters deploy when they have already decided something and are waiting for the formality of a hearing to conclude. He stands in the center of the circle with Anakin Skywalker beside him. The boy is 10 years old now. A year on Coruscant has softened nothing essential about him. He is still watchful, still too old in the eyes. Still built for alertness rather than rest, but he stands differently than he did in the garden on Naboo. Straighter, less like a child managing a space and more like a child who has, for the first time, someone managing it with him. Mace Windu begins. The questions are not cruel. That's the thing about the Jedi Council at its worst. It is never cruel, exactly. It is careful and measured and deeply structurally certain of its own wisdom, which produces an effect indistinguishable from cruelty in the people on the receiving end of it. The fear test, the midi-chlorian readings, the gentle, exhaustive inventory of every shadow in the boy's emotional landscape, conducted in front of 12 pairs of eyes, by people who have already weighed the outcome. Anakin answers each question with the careful honesty of a child who has learned that lying to adults is usually pointless and sometimes dangerous. What do you fear? His mother. Being alone. That the things he loves will be taken before he can protect them. The answers come quiet and direct, and they land in the chamber like confessions. Vader watches the council's faces. He watches Mace receive each answer with the particular compression around the jaw that means a threshold is being crossed. He watches Yoda, whose eyes have not left him, not the boy, him, since they entered the room. Mace delivers the verdict the way a stone is placed, not thrown. Deliberate, final. He is too old. There is too much fear in him. He will not be trained. Anakin goes still beside him in the way that means he is absorbing something that hurts and has decided not to show it. Vader knows that stillness. He built an empire partly on what grew inside it. He steps forward. It is not Obi-Wan's step. Obi-Wan would have marshaled an argument, measured and respectful, the practiced advocacy of a Padawan who has learned to work within systems. What he does is simply stand, one pace forward from where a petitioner stands, and let the silence extend 2 beats past comfortable. Every eye in the room finds him. With respect, he says, and his voice carries the flat, unhurried weight of a man who has given orders in burning corridors. I'd like to name what just happened in this room. Mace's expression doesn't change. Master Kenobi, you asked a 10-year-old boy what he fears. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. You inventoried his vulnerabilities in a formal setting, in front of strangers, with his future contingent on the answers. And when he answered honestly, when he told you he fears losing the people he loves, you counted that against him. A beat. I want to be careful here, because I have a great deal of respect for this institution. So I'll simply ask, is there a child in this galaxy, force-sensitive or otherwise, who would not fail that test? Silence. Ki-Adi-Mundi shifts in his chair. One of the hollow presences flickers. The council's concern, Mace says, measured, is not that the boy experiences fear. It is the degree, the depth of attachment. The degree. He lets that sit. You're afraid of the degree of his love for his mother, a woman who raised him alone, in slavery, on a planet the Republic has chosen not to reach. You're afraid he loves her too much. He looks around the circle slowly, not confrontationally, just letting each face register that he's seeing it. I want to be honest with this council, because I think honesty is owed here. You are not afraid of Anakin Skywalker's fear. You are afraid of Anakin Skywalker's power. And his fear is the instrument you've chosen to manage it with. Those are different things, and conflating them is beneath this body. The temperature in the room changes. Mace's voice, when it comes, is very quiet. You should be careful, Master Kenobi. I am being careful. He looks at him directly. I'm being precise. There's a difference. He turns slightly, including the full circle. I have seen what happens to power left untrained and unloved. I have seen what fear of loss becomes when it has nowhere to go, no one to speak it to, no framework that treats it as something other than a character flaw. His voice doesn't break. He has absolute control over his voice right now, and it costs him. I will not stand in this room and watch this council repeat that. Not with this boy. What you are describing, Yoda says, from his chair, very quietly, is personal. The chamber focuses. Yoda has not moved. His eyes, half-lidded and ancient, are fixed on him with an attention that is nothing like the political assessment Mace has been running. This is something else. Something that goes sideways through the Force rather than forward through the air, touching things that have no business being touched in a council hearing. It is personal, he says, and holds Yoda's gaze. He is my Padawan. I intend to train him with or without this council's sanction. He lets that land. There are precedents, he continues, before the room can reorganize around the statement, for unaffiliated Force-sensitive instruction. They are old precedents and rarely invoked, and invoking one would represent a fracture between this order and my service to it that I would genuinely grieve. I am not making a threat. I am telling you the truth about what I will do, because I think you deserve the truth, and because I think this institution functions better when people tell it hard truths instead of managing it with comfortable ones. A pause. Train him, with my guidance, under this order's structure. Or, I will train him outside it. Those are the choices available. Mace stares at him for a long moment. Then he looks at Yoda. Yoda's eyes are still on him. Not on Mace. Still on him, with that sideways attention that he doesn't know how to close himself to, because he doesn't know what Yoda is reading or how deep it goes. He holds it. He has nothing to hide that he can afford to protect. The silence runs long enough that Anakin glances up at him once. He doesn't look down. He keeps his eyes on the circle and lets the room decide. Ki-Adi-Mundi speaks first. Then, Shak-Ti. The conversation is careful and institutional, and does not entirely conceal the fact that the Council has encountered an argument it cannot answer with policy, because the argument was not made in policy's language. Mace says very little. He watches the room reach its conclusion the way water finds level, not because anyone has been convinced, exactly, but because the alternative has been named aloud, and no one in this chamber wants to be the vote that fractures the order over a 10-year-old boy. The vote, when it comes, is not unanimous. It doesn't need to be. Anakin will be trained. He walks out of the chamber with the boy beside him, and into a corridor of pale stone and filtered morning light, and when the chamber door closes behind them he stops, and stands very still, and exhales once, long and controlled, through his nose. The boy looks up at him. Did you know they'd say yes? He considers the question honestly. I knew what I was willing to do if they said no. Anakin processes this with the seriousness he applies to everything. Then, quietly, with the particular gravity of a child who is not given to statements he doesn't mean, I'm glad it's you. He doesn't answer. He can't. Immediately, he puts his hand briefly on the boy's shoulder. Brief, grounding, real, and they walk together down the corridor toward whatever comes next. And the first domino settles into the dust of a history that is already becoming something else. The nightmare comes at the 3rd hour past midnight. He hears it through the wall of their shared temple quarters, not the sound of dreaming exactly, but the particular quality of silence that breaks wrong. A held breath stretched past its limit, and then the small, involuntary sound of a boy waking into fear. He is already moving before he has consciously decided to move, crossing the darkened common room in bare feet, pushing open the door. Anakin is sitting upright on his bunk, with both hands pressed flat against the mattress, orienting himself the way you do when the room you've woken into feels less real than the one you just left. His breathing is fast and shallow. His eyes find the doorway and the shape standing in it, and some of the tension leaves his shoulders immediately. An involuntary response, already trained in after a year of this, the specific relief of a child who has learned that someone will come. He crosses the room and sits on the edge of the bunk. Tatooine, he says. Not a question. Anakin nods once, jaw tight with the effort of not elaborating. She's all right, he says. Right now, tonight, she is all right. You don't know that. He does know that. He knows exactly where Shmi Skywalker is tonight, in a slaver's compound in Mos Espa, frightened and alive, with years left before any harm finds her, years he has no intention of allowing to reach her. He says none of this. I know it the way I know most things, he says instead. You'll have to decide how much that's worth. Anakin looks at him in the dim light with those eyes that are always processing, always running the calculation underneath the surface. Then he lies back down, slowly, and stares at the ceiling. I dream about her hands, he says, very quietly. She has calluses from the shop work. I keep dreaming they're bleeding. The knowledge sits in his chest like a coal. Get some sleep, he says. He stays on the edge of the bunk until the boy's breathing evens. Then he goes back to his own room and sits on the edge of his own bed and makes the decision he has been building toward for 11 months, and finds it already made, has been made since the garden on Naboo, has been made since before he arrived in this body. In the morning, he contacts the Council with a training mission proposal. Desert survival. Outer Rim cultural exposure. A Padawan benefits from hardship beyond the temple's controlled environment. Master Windu approves it in 6 hours without asking follow-up questions, which either means the argument was sound, or means Mace Windu is deeply relieved to have them out of the building for 2 weeks. Possibly both. Tatooine from orbit looks exactly as he remembers. The color of old bone. The Terminator line between day and night side, a clean, brutal edge. No atmospheric softening. Just rock, and then dark. He watches it through the cockpit viewport and feels nothing poetic about it. He was not built for poetry about Tatooine. He was built, in the first version of his life, partly by it, and he has made his peace with that fact by deciding to unmake what it made. Anakin presses close to the viewport beside him, and doesn't say anything, and doesn't need to. Mos Espa in the early morning smells of hot metal and old cooking fat, and the particular mineral dust that gets into everything and stays. The streets are narrow, and the light is already vicious at the 7th hour, and Vader walks through it in nondescript, traveling clothes with his hood up and his senses running wide. And Anakin walks beside him, vibrating with a controlled urgency that he is managing with visible effort. You said we have a meeting, Anakin says. We do. With who? A businessman. Watto's shop sits at the end of a crooked lane that smells of machine oil and desperation. The Toydarian himself is behind the counter when they enter, hovering at eye level with a manifest he's frowning at. And he looks up when the door chime sounds, with the expression of a man who expects a customer and is prepared to disappoint them. The expression changes when he registers the height and the stillness of the man in the doorway. Not buying today, Watto says, immediately, whatever you're selling. I'm buying actually. He moves to the counter without haste. Anakin stays near the door. Specifically, I'm purchasing a manumission contract. 1 adult female, human, current designation Skywalker. Watto's wings adjust. His eyes sharpen into the particular calculation of a man who has survived in a hut-adjacent economy by knowing immediately when something profitable has walked through his door and refusing to show it. Don't know what you're talking about. Your debts are considerable, he says conversationally, and the market price on refined Outer Rim commodities has dropped sharply this quarter, which affects the resale value of approximately 60% of your current inventory. The tariff adjustment on Outer Rim parts imports that the Senate passed 3 months ago will cost you another 8% on margin by end of year. He pauses. I'm prepared to offer you $20,000 for the contract. In Republic credits, cleared through a legitimate Naboo trade house, no record of Jedi involvement. Watto stares at him. 22, the Toydarian says. 20. This is negotiation. No. He says, gently, it isn't. The quality of stillness he produces in that moment is not threatening. There is no hand near the lightsaber he isn't carrying. There is no force pressure applied, no manipulation of the room's emotional weather. It is simply the stillness of a man who has already decided the outcome of this conversation and is waiting with complete patience for the other participant to arrive at the same understanding. Watto holds out for 4 more minutes. It is, genuinely, an impressive 4 minutes. He signs the contract. Shmi Skywalker opens the door of the compound's modest attached dwelling herself, because there is no one else to open it, and she stands in the doorway with the particular wariness of a woman who has learned that unexpected visitors rarely mean good things, and she looks at the quiet man on her step, and then past him, and she sees her son. She makes a sound that is not a word. Anakin crosses the distance between them at a speed that has nothing to do with force ability and everything to do with 11 months of nightmares, and she catches him, and they hold each other in the doorway with the specific completeness of two people who are each the other's proof that the world is real. He looks away. He gives them the minute, without his eyes on it. When he looks back, Shmi is watching him over her son's shoulder. Her face is wet. Her eyes are carrying a question she doesn't yet have the context to ask. He steps forward. "My name is Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm Anakin's teacher." He pauses. "You're free, Shmi. The contract is signed and registered. You're free. And I'd like to talk with you about where you'd like to go next." She doesn't ask what the catch is. She has been a slave long enough to know that questions come after the fact of the thing, not before. She simply nods, once, and her hand moves to the back of her son's head, and she holds him tighter, and the question in her eyes shifts from "what is this" to "thank you" without her mouth moving at all. They sit inside at a small table and he lays out the options plainly. Naboo, with a stipend and a letter of introduction to the household of a senator who owes him a favor. Alderaan if she prefers anonymity. A new name if she wants one. He is not offering charity, he tells her. He is offering what should have been available to her 20 years ago, and wasn't. Through a failure of Republic reach that he declines to dress up as anything other than what it is. She chooses Naboo. "The green," she says. She has never lived somewhere green. He nods and makes a note, and does not let his face show what that single sentence costs him to hear. He brought this woman a death in the original version of events. He brought her son a rage that never fully cooled. He can give her Naboo and green hills and a life that ends quietly, decades from now, in a bed she chose. And it will not balance the ledger. He is not trying to balance the ledger. He has accepted the ledger cannot be balanced, but it is the next right thing. And that is all any second chance requires. Anakin sits beside his mother with her hand over his on the table. And his face is doing something Vader has never seen on it in any version of any timeline. Pure, uncomplicated peace. The first and most dangerous thread has been cut. The dark side's tapestry, that vast and intricate architecture of grief and leverage in compounding wound, is missing one load-bearing cord tonight. He folds the contract into his pocket. He breathes. He looks out through the small window at the twin suns of Tatooine, burning in the white sky, and he lets the silence be what it is, and for the first time since he woke gasping in a young man's body on the floor of a Naboo generator complex, he does not feel like a man running out of time. 7 years pass the way wars pass, not all at once, but in accumulation. One small, irreversible thing after another until the landscape is unrecognizable, and you can no longer point to the moment it changed. Anakin Skywalker at 16 is not the boy from Tatooine anymore, except in the ways that matter. The watchfulness is still there, but it has lost its defensive edge. It reads now as attention, rather than vigilance. The focused presence of someone who has learned that the world can be observed with curiosity, rather than managed for threat. He is tall, faster than almost anyone in the temple, and possessed of a connection to the Force that makes senior knights stop in the training corridors and watch without pretending they aren't watching. He laughs easily. He argues with his master constantly, with the cheerful combativeness of someone who has learned that disagreement doesn't precede abandonment. He has no secrets. That last fact is the one that matters most, and Vader has cultivated it with the same deliberate precision he once applied to building an empire's military doctrine. Every fear Anakin names, he meets without flinching. Every attachment he confesses, to Padme's letters, to his mother's occasional transmissions from Naboo, to the friendships he builds with Ahsoka and Rex and a rotating cast of pilots who can't keep up with him, gets treated as information rather than weakness. The Jedi Code's prohibition on attachment has been interpreted, in their partnership, as a warning about possession rather than a ban on love, and the distinction has made all the difference. Palpatine has found no seams to work with, not for lack of trying. The invitation arrives through official Senate channels, which is how it always arrives. Correct, courteous, impossible to object to on its surface. Chancellor Palpatine requests the honor of young Padawan Skywalker's company at the galaxy's Opera House. A cultural enrichment outing. A gesture of the Chancellor's long-standing interest in the boy's development. He sends his acceptance the same afternoon, His own name is included on it. The opera house is all red and gold. Tiers of private boxes rising above a stage were something aquatic, and Mon Calamari is currently being performed with extraordinary commitment. The Chancellor's box is at the premier level, naturally, with a view that encompasses everything, and a seating arrangement designed to produce the sensation of being trusted with the best seat in the room. Palpatine is already there when they arrive. He rises when they enter, and the warmth he produces is technically flawless. The genuine pleasure, the extended hand, the particular attention he directs at Anakin that communicates you, specifically, are why I am glad to be here. My boy, he says, to Anakin. Chancellor, Anakin says, with the easy respect of someone who finds the man pleasant and has never been given reason to find him otherwise. Vader takes the seat between them. He does this without comment, without strategy visible on his surface. There is simply a beat where the spatial arrangement of three people settling into chairs resolves with him in the middle, close enough to the Chancellor that conversation can flow naturally, positioned in a way that is entirely socially legible as consideration for Anakin's comfort. Palpatine's eyes track the movement once. Briefly, he says nothing. The performance begins below. For 20 minutes the conversation is genuine, Anakin asking questions about the calamari composer's technique, Palpatine answering with the broad cultural knowledge of a man who has spent decades accumulating the tools of charm. Vader interjecting occasionally with observations that redirect toward the music rather than toward Anakin. The Chancellor is good at this. He is one of the best who has ever lived at the architecture of seemingly natural conversation, and Vader watches him work with the specific attention of a student who studied under the master. Then, at the interval, the opera pauses, and Palpatine turns with the ease of a man changing a comfortable subject. Anakin, he says, warmly, I wonder if you'd mind. There's a refreshment level 2 floors down, and I find this particular intermission rather long. Would you fetch us something? I'd love a moment with your master. Anakin stands immediately, obligingly, unbothered. Vader says, I'll come with you. Anakin looks at him. It's literally 1 floor, 2 floors. He stands. And I'm thirsty. There is a beat, perfectly still, in which Palpatine's warmth neither increases nor decreases, but becomes, very slightly, architectural, maintained rather than produced. Anakin shrugs with the total unself-consciousness of a 16-year-old who has just been recruited for a drinks run, and heads for the door. Vader follows. He looks back, once, from the threshold. Palpatine is watching him with the patient, pleasant expression of a man at the opera who is enjoying his evening. The expression doesn't reach whatever is running behind his eyes, which is older and colder and has spent 2 minutes recalculating a variable that keeps refusing to behave like a variable. The second time, it is subtler. A Senate youth program, a demonstration of Padawan combat techniques, an event with 50 witnesses, entirely public. Anakin is assigned to demonstrate alongside 3 other Padawans, and there is nothing in the scheduling that places them anywhere near the Chancellor. It is, on its surface, an event with no opportunity built into it, except that there is a reception afterward. And at the reception, a gap of approximately 9 minutes where the crowds flow, and the architecture of the room, and a very natural conversation drawing Vader toward a senior council member create. Briefly, a clear line between Palpatine and Anakin with no one between them. He becomes aware of it 2 minutes before it resolves. He excuses himself from Ki-Adi Mundi mid-sentence, crosses the room, and is standing next to Anakin with a glass of water, and no particular explanation when Palpatine arrives at the conversational endpoint the gap was designed to produce. The Chancellor looks at him. He smiles back. Master Kenobi. Palpatine's voice carries the warmth of a man delighted to encounter a colleague. You seem to find yourself wherever Anakin is. He's my Padawan, he says pleasantly. It would be strange if I didn't. A pause. Small and perfectly controlled. Of course. The Chancellor shifts toward Anakin with the natural pivot of social grace. Your form today was extraordinary, my boy. I particularly noticed, Chancellor, he says. Still pleasant, still entirely unthreatening in register. I've been meaning to ask your office about the Appropriations Committee timeline on the Outer Rim infrastructure proposal. I know it's not your direct portfolio, but I suspect you have visibility. He produces from his expression exactly the right quantity of mild, collegial interest. Would you mind? Palpatine looks at him. Not warmly, exactly, with precision. The expression of a man examining something that has happened twice now, in different configurations, and is reaching a conclusion about whether the pattern is intentional. He decides, in this moment, to answer the question. He holds Palpatine's gaze with the specific quality of attention he has been saving for exactly this moment, not hostile, not accusatory, carrying none of the anger that would make it manageable, just clear. Completely clear. The clarity of a man who knows what you are and what you intend, and is telling you, wordlessly, across 3 feet of reception space and a glass of water, that he knows, and that he will be here, and that there are no seams. Palpatine is extraordinarily good at not reacting. He is, by any measure, the greatest political actor in the history of the Republic. He holds the eye contact for 2 seconds, and returns a smile of absolute social smoothness, and begins answering the infrastructure question with apparent, genuine interest. You seem remarkably prepared for these conversations, Master Kenobi, he says at the end of his answer. Lightly, informatively, I've had a great deal of time, he says, to think about what a good mentor looks like, Chancellor, and what one doesn't. The silence that follows is not long. 3 seconds. 4. Anakin, standing just behind his left shoulder, is watching the Mon Calamari troop reassemble on the stage below, and has not registered any of this as anything other than adult small talk. Palpatine nods once, graciously, and moves on to speak with a senator he has been neglecting, and the reception continues in every observable way as a normal reception. He does not look back. He doesn't need to. He can feel, with the specific certainty of a man who spent 2 decades in service to this entity, the moment the Chancellor stops improvising and begins planning in a different key entirely. The warmth is gone now, from whatever private register Palpatine keeps beneath the performance. What replaces it is not anger, it is the cold, focused attention of a man who has just identified a genuine threat and begun calculating accordingly. Vader picks up his water glass. He sips it. He watches the stage with his Padawan beside him, whole and unsuspecting and entirely out of reach, and he lets Palpatine calculate. Because the calculation will not find what it's looking for. There are no seams. He has spent 7 years making sure of it. There is nothing here to pull. The request goes through the Council as a routine investigative follow-up. Master Sifo Dyas, deceased Jedi, had maintained correspondence with several Outer Rim governments in the years before his death, governments whose files remain only partially audited, whose relationships with the Order remain technically unresolved. The proposal is thorough, bureaucratically sound, and specific enough to suggest genuine investigative instinct without revealing that he knows exactly what he will find at the coordinates he has already identified. Mace approves it in 3 days. Yoda says nothing at the meeting where it's discussed, which has become over the past 7 years its own category of communication. He goes alone. He tells Anakin it is a records audit. Anakin believes him, or believes him enough not to push, which is close enough. He takes a nondescript transport with civilian registration and files a flight plan that routes through 2 systems before it reaches its true destination, and he sits in the cockpit for the 11-hour journey and does not sleep. Camino from approach looks like a wound. No landmass. No geography to give the eye a resting point. Just ocean in every direction, silver gray and churned by permanent weather systems that produce rain the way other planets produce air, continuously, reflexively, without pause. The platforms of Tipoca City emerge from the cloud cover as he descends, white towers rising from the water on stilt legs, connected by enclosed walkways, lit from within against the dark. Clean, sterile, precise, he sets the transport down on the landing platform and sits for a moment before opening the ramp. He knows what is inside. He has known for years, not because he investigated, but because he remembers, with the specific clarity of a man who spent 2 decades as the instrument those inside this facility were built to serve. He knows the corridors. He knows the cloning tubes, row after row, hundreds of thousands of identical genetic copies growing in controlled suspension. He knows the training floors where those copies run drills with weapons they have been engineered to carry. He knows the inhibitor chips, microscopic, biological, seated at the base of each clone's brain stem. Carrying a command sequence no one in the Republic knows exists. He breathes through the knowing. Then he opens the ramp and walks into the rain. The Kaminoan who receives him is tall, white, and possessed of the particular tranquility of a species that has evolved past discomfort with silence. She introduces herself as Tan Wei, assigns him a guide, and walks him through the facility with the obvious professional pride of someone showing work they are genuinely devoted to. He listens. He asks the correct questions, logistical, administrative, the questions of a Jedi conducting an audit rather than an investigation. He notes the exits. He notes the security rotation. He notes where the primary cloning network terminals are housed and which corridors lead to the server infrastructure beneath the habitation level. The tour takes 2 hours. By the end of it, he has a complete mental map of everything he needs and a working understanding of the security schedule. Extraordinary work, he tells Tan Wei, and means it in a way she will not fully understand. Because the work is extraordinary, and because what has been done with it is an atrocity, and both things are true simultaneously. They give him a room for the night. Standard Jedi visiting protocols, entirely routine. He waits until the 4th hour past midnight. The corridors at that hour carry only the baseline hum of climate systems and the soft, regular footsteps of 2 guard security rotations cycling on a 20-minute pattern. He has the pattern memorized from the tour. He moves through the dark in soft shoes with his lightsaber on his belt and his force presence pulled inward. Not hidden exactly. He is not skilled enough at concealment to fool a genuinely attentive force user, but quieted. Reduced to something that reads as ambient rather than present. The server room is 3 levels below the habitation deck. The door is biometric, keyed to Kaminoan physiology. He bypasses it through the ventilation access panel adjacent to the frame, a maintenance route that assumes the threat model is external rather than internal, which is the security assumption of a facility that has never considered itself a target. He is inside in 4 minutes. The terminals are arranged in a cold blue ring around a central processing column that hums at a frequency slightly below hearing. He finds the node he needs, behavioral inhibitor sequencing, cross-referenced with the clone designation architecture, and sits down in front of it and begins to work. He is not a slicer by training. He was never required to be. But 2 decades as the Emperor's primary enforcer meant exposure to the Empire's most classified systems architecture, and the clone inhibitor chips were Imperial technology retrofitted from Republic-era precursors, which means the command structure he is looking at is a version of a system he has seen before, in the other direction. He knows what Order 66 looks like from inside the machine that runs it. The recognition, when it comes, is a physical thing. He finds the command sequence buried 4 layers beneath the standard behavioral protocols, wrapped in encryption that is sophisticated by current Republic standards and which he unravels in 11 minutes using a decryption approach that should not exist for another decade. The sequence is clean, compressed, efficient, 14 characters that, delivered on the right encrypted frequency by the right authority, would simultaneously activate every chip in every skull in this facility and produce, across the entire Grand Army of the Republic, a single unified behavior. Kill the Jedi. He sits with it for a moment. He does not let himself feel it fully, because feeling it fully would cost him time he doesn't have, and he is in a server room on a planet full of sleeping soldiers who carry this thing in their heads without knowing it, and he has approximately 40 minutes before the next security rotation brings someone past the ventilation access he left unsealed. He writes the patch in 32 minutes. It is not elegant. He is not writing elegant code. He is writing something that needs to work, specifically and completely, and he builds it from the command sequence's own architecture, a corruption seeded into the inhibitor chip's response protocol that will misread the activation frequency as system noise and fail to execute. Not a removal. Removal would require physical surgery on hundreds of thousands of active soldiers and is not an option available to him tonight. A patch. Dormant. Invisible to standard diagnostic scans, sitting in the behavioral code like a word that looks correct until the moment it's needed to mean something, at which point it means nothing at all. He uploads it to the central processing column. The terminal acknowledges the right. He sits in the blue dark and checks the upload 3 times. Then he hears footsteps. Not the rotation. The rotation is 12 minutes out. These are different. Heavier, one set, irregular rhythm. The footfall of someone who isn't walking a route, but walking with intent. And they are coming from the direction of the habitation level rather than the security corridor. He closes the terminal, moves behind the central column, pulls his presence in until it is as close to nothing as he can make it. The footsteps stop outside the door. A pause. 10 seconds. 15. Then Jango Fett's voice, flat and professional, speaks into a comlink at the volume of a man who doesn't expect to be overheard. Sector 7 clear, he says. A response crackles back, inaudible at this distance, running a thermal anomaly from the server level. Probably nothing. A pause. I'll do a walk. He does not move. He regulates his breathing to the rhythm of the climate system and becomes, as completely as he knows how to become, furniture. The door does not open. 40 seconds of silence. Then the footsteps move away, back toward the habitation level, unhurried, satisfied. He waits another 3 minutes before he moves. He is back in his room before the 4th hour rotation completes its cycle. He lies on the bed and stares at the ceiling in the dark and listens to the rain on the exterior of the platform, which is constant and will apparently be constant forever on this planet. Somewhere below him, in controlled suspension in fluid-filled tubes, hundreds of thousands of soldiers are growing toward a war they did not choose. They will fight it anyway. They will fight it with total commitment and genuine courage, and they will die in numbers that do not appear in Republic casualty reports. Because no one has decided yet whether clones constitute casualties in the relevant sense. They will not, now, be turned on the people they are fighting beside. He does not feel triumphant about this. Triumph requires a frame of reference in which what just happened is an achievement, rather than the minimum correction for a crime he had partial responsibility for enabling, in another life, through 2 decades of service to the man who designed it. He closes his eyes. The war is still coming. Palpatine still has his pieces on the board. Dooku, Grievous, the separatist movement. The emergency powers framework he will maneuver the Senate into granting him. The architecture of control is still being built around the Republic like a hand closing, but its teeth have just been pulled. The rain continues. He lets it. Anakin comes to him on a Tuesday, not dramatically, not with the prefatory anxiety of someone who has been rehearsing a confession. He simply appears in the doorway of the small study where Vader has been working through a stack of mission reports, and his posture carries the specific quality of a person who has decided to say a thing and is now committed to the saying of it regardless of outcome. He is 19. He has his mother's directness and his own hard-won confidence, and a lightsaber scar along his left forearm from a training accident 6 months ago that he refused to have fully healed because he said it reminded him to be less arrogant about Ceresu, which Vader found both exasperating and privately, completely characteristic. "I'm in love with Padme," he says from the doorway. Vader sets down the report he's holding. "I know," he says. Anakin's expression does the thing it does when he's recalibrating. A brief, total stillness, then a reset. "How long?" "Since Naboo. The 2nd time. When she came for the Trade Federation hearings and you spent 3 days finding reasons to be in the Senate district." "I was." Anakin stops. Recalibrates again. "I thought I was being subtle. You were 19 and in love," he says. "Subtlety wasn't available to you as an option." Anakin steps into the room properly and leans against the wall with his arms crossed, which is the posture he takes when he is processing something that hasn't resolved yet into either relief or argument. His jaw is set. He is waiting for the other thing, for the correction, the caution, the institutional weight of the code arriving to manage what he's feeling into something more appropriate. He picks the report back up, sets it in the completed pile, picks up the next one. "Sit down, Anakin." Anakin sits. "I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't love her," he says without looking up from the report. "I'm also not going to tell you that the Order's concern about attachment is simply wrong, because it isn't simply wrong. It's incompletely right. which is more dangerous than being wrong, because it's harder to argue with. He sets the second report down. Do you know what the actual danger is? Not the code's version, the real one. Anakin is watching him with the focused attention he reserves for things that matter. Fear of loss. Fear of loss, he agrees. Specifically, the fear that becomes need, that becomes possession, that becomes the willingness to burn everything around you to keep one thing from disappearing. He meets Anakin's eyes directly. Love isn't the problem. Love given freely, without the need to control the person you're giving it to, is one of the strongest things in the galaxy. The danger was never loving Padme. He pauses, long enough for the next sentence to land with its full weight. It was what fear does to love when it has to hide. Anakin is very still. So we won't hide, he says. The stillness breaks. Not dramatically. Anakin doesn't do drama when he's genuinely moved. He goes quiet in a way that is almost the opposite of his baseline energy. He looks at the middle distance for a moment, working through something. The Council. Let me worry about the Council. Master. Anakin. He waits until the boy looks at him. Has there been a single conversation in the last 9 years where I have asked you to be less than you are? A beat. Then, quietly. No. Then trust me with this one. He goes to Padme himself, the following morning, without Anakin. She receives him in her Senate apartment with the wariness of a woman who has learned to assess the purpose of unexpected visits from Jedi in under 30 seconds. She offers tea. He accepts. They sit across from each other at her small dining table with the Coruscant skyline visible through the floor to ceiling windows behind her, traffic streaming past in its endless vertical rivers. He told you, she says. Not a question. He did. She wraps both hands around her cup. She is 22, a senator, and possessed of the particular composure of someone who has been managing other people's perceptions of her since adolescence. The composure is real and also, he knows, a practiced art, and underneath it right now is something more unguarded, a woman waiting to hear what it's going to cost her. I'm not here to ask you to end it, he says. She looks up. I'm here to tell you that I know, and that I'm not asking you to carry it as a secret, and that I think the thing you're both afraid of, the Order, the Senate, the scandal, can be managed without requiring either of you to become smaller than you are. He sets his cup down. What I am going to say, and I need you to hear it fully, is that the version of this that damages both of you is not the love. It's the hiding, the shame, the isolation that comes from having one part of your life that can never be spoken to the people who matter most. He pauses. I watched attachment become a weapon once. I won't watch it happen again. She studies him the way she studies difficult legislation, looking for the mechanism, the structural intent behind the language. You're not what anyone told me Jedi are like, she says finally. I'm told that occasionally. The composure shifts, becomes, for a moment, something more unguarded still. I love him, she says. Specifically, completely I'm not. I'm not confused about it, or ambivalent about it. I've been not confused about it for 3 years. I know, he says, gently, and you're all right with it. He considers the question honestly, because she deserves honesty rather than reassurance. I am all right with anything that makes him whole, he says, and I have never in 9 years seen anything make him as whole as you do. She is quiet for a moment. Then, what does managing it look like? Practically, Naboo in the late afternoon has the quality of light that painters spend careers trying to reproduce. Something in the angle and the water content of the air that turns ordinary gold into something that feels chosen. The lake country specifically, away from Theed's architecture, is open and green and so extravagantly alive after the gray stone of Coruscant that it registers as almost aggressive. The ceremony is small, deliberately, specifically small. Himself and the Naboo family's ancient housekeeper who serves as the only other witness, and R2 in the background projecting soft ambient light, because Anakin asked him to, and no one had the heart to say no. He officiates it himself. He has been composing what he wants to say for 3 weeks. And what he arrives at in the end is not from the Jedi liturgy, which covers death and transition and the will of the Force but has almost nothing useful to say about two people choosing each other. What he says is simpler. He tells them that love is not a weakness the Order has learned to tolerate. That it is, in his studied and hard-won opinion, the only force in the galaxy that has ever genuinely competed with the dark side on even ground. That the code was right that attachment can corrupt, and wrong that the solution is removal rather than honesty. That what he is witnessing, two people who have looked at each other without illusion and chosen yes anyway, is the specific thing the dark side cannot manufacture or replicate, because it requires the willingness to be changed by something outside yourself, and the dark side is, at its core, the absolute refusal of that. Anakin is watching him with wet eyes and the expression of a man hearing something he has always half known, and is only now being given permission to fully know. Padme's face is doing something so specific and private that he looks away to give her the moment. They say what they say to each other. He listens without listening, giving them the privacy of his inattention, watching instead a pair of birds crossing the lake's surface in the middle distance. He thinks of Padme's voice in another version of events, saying she still loved him at the very end, when love was the only thing left that was true. He thinks of all the places that love had nowhere to go. He thinks, not this time. They exchange what they exchange. He completes the words that complete the right. The lake takes the sound of it and turns it back as echo, and then silence. And the light does what Naboo light does, and the housekeeper weeps quietly near the doorway, and R2 projects something blue and soft that approximates starlight. There is no secret here now. There is a marriage, witnessed and real, held between people who know about it, rather than weaponized by people who don't. Palpatine has one fewer thread to pull. He walks to the edge of the dock afterward and stands with his hands in his pockets, while the newlyweds have the minutes that belong to them, and he watches the sun find the lake's horizon, and he allows himself to feel, without managing it into something more appropriate, what it means to have been here for this. What it means that it happened at all. The water catches the last of the light and holds it briefly, and then the light is gone, and the stars begin. And behind him, Anakin laughs at something Padme has said in the way he laughs when he is completely unguarded, and the sound of it carries across the water and does not diminish. The war is 3 years old and going wrong for everyone who designed it. Not visibly. On the surface of Republic HoloNet broadcasts, the Clone Wars read as a grinding but manageable conflict. Separatist advances checked, key systems held, the Grand Army performing with the disciplined efficiency of soldiers who were built for exactly this. Senators debate resource allocation. Generals file casualty reports. The Chancellor expresses measured confidence in his addresses to the Senate, and the Senate, exhausted and frightened and grateful for measured confidence, receives it like water. Underneath that surface, Palpatine's architecture is failing in ways no one else can see. The clone army's hidden failsafe is gone. He doesn't know this yet. The patch sits dormant in hundreds of thousands of skulls, invisible to every diagnostic the Kaminoans run, and will remain invisible until the moment it's needed, at which point it will simply not work. What he does know is that his primary asset, the boy, the chosen one, the specific soul he spent a decade selecting and preparing, and slowly separating from everything that might anchor him to the light, is unreachable. Has been unreachable since Naboo. Has become, under the patient and infuriating stewardship of Obi-Wan Kenobi, something that Palpatine's entire strategic model did not account for, a Skywalker who is whole. The frustration of this does not show on Palpatine's face. It never shows on his face. But Darth Sidious, in the private chamber beneath the executive suite where no surveillance runs and no aid has ever been permitted, has been running new calculations for 18 months. He contacts Dooku on a secure channel at the 3rd hour past midnight, Coruscant time. Dooku appears in the hologram blue and angular, the particular stillness of a man who has disciplined his body into an extension of his will. He is, by any objective measure, one of the finest minds the Jedi Order ever produced and one of the most dangerous duelists alive. He is also, though he has not fully articulated this to himself, a man who has begun to notice the specific sensation of being managed. The Kenobi problem, Sidious says, without preamble. Dooku's expression doesn't shift. I'm aware of it. Then you understand that it has moved from an inconvenience to a structural threat. A pause, precise and chosen. He knows what I am. You have no proof of that. I have 7 years of him being exactly where I need him not to be. Without a single misstep, without a single overreach, without providing me one actionable piece of evidence against him. The hologram's voice remains conversational. Men who fight clean fights do not fight like that. He is fighting a specific opponent, with specific knowledge of that opponent's methods. There is only one source for that knowledge. Dooku is quiet for a moment. You believe the Force has given him prescience. I believe, Sidious says, that it doesn't matter what the source is. The result is the same. He cannot be outpatienced. He cannot be isolated. He cannot be used. Another pause. And as long as he stands between me and Skywalker, Skywalker cannot be turned. The hologram light plays across Dooku's face in the way that makes his expressions harder to read, which Dooku prefers. What are you proposing? A simplification, Sidious says. The long game has become compromised. We return to direct action. You and Grievous, combined, on ground of our choosing. Not a political maneuver. Not a manipulation. An elimination. Dooku considers this. He considers it the way he considers everything, fully without the reassurance of rushing past the uncomfortable parts. Kenobi, he says. Kenobi, Sidious confirms. The boy is secondary. Remove the master, and Skywalker's emotional foundation collapses. Grief, isolation, a marriage he still cannot publicly acknowledge. The leverage reconstitutes itself in his absence. We are patient after that. And if Skywalker is present at the engagement? Then both, Sidious says, pleasantly, but Kenobi is the primary objective. Is that clear? Entirely, Dooku says. He cuts the transmission. He stands alone for a moment in the dark of his private quarters, and what crosses his face in the absence of observation is not enthusiasm. Vader feels it on a Thursday. Not a premonition exactly. The Force does not speak to him in the clean, interpretable visions it sometimes sent to Anakin in the original timeline. What he feels is a shift in pressure. The way weather changes before it's visible in the sky. Something has realigned in the structure of whatever is being built against him. The patience is gone from it. What replaces patience in a strategist like Palpatine is decision. He is in the training hall with Anakin when it arrives. They are running a forms drill, no sabers, just the footwork. Anakin pushing the boundaries of Ataru's leaping extensions while Vader tracks the gaps his aggression opens and names them without criticism. It is work they have done 10,000 times in some variation, and Anakin moves through it with the fluid confidence of someone who has long since stopped being afraid of correction. Vader stops calling the gaps. Anakin completes the sequence and comes to rest, and looks at him. You went quiet. I'm thinking. You think loudly. Anakin picks up his water, watching him with the attention he reserves for the versions of his master that other people don't see. What is it? He looks at Anakin, 19 years old, whole, married, loved, possessed of every anchor the original version of him was systematically stripped of, and he makes a calculation that he has been making in one form or another for 22 years, in 2 different lifetimes. The calculation is simple. The simple version is always the right one. I think, he says, carefully, that what comes next will not look like what came before. Anakin sets the water down, meaning the approach changes. Meaning, patience runs out eventually, even for patient men, and what replaces it is direct. He holds Anakin's gaze. I need you to prepare yourself for the possibility that the next engagement, whatever form it takes, is not incidental. That it is specifically designed. Designed for you. He doesn't answer, which is its own answer. Anakin is quiet for a moment. The training hall hums around them. Distant shouts and saber crackle from other rooms filtering through the walls. Then we prepare for it together, Anakin says. Not a question. Not offered for debate. Yes, he says. That's exactly what we do. The mission briefing comes 6 days later through standard council channels. A separatist-held moon in the outer rim, Morjone, resource poor, strategically minor, notable primarily for a communication relay the separatists have been using to coordinate supply chain movements in that sector. A small engagement. 2 Jedi. A squad of clones. A relay to disable. The kind of operation that appears on the Council's scheduling board a dozen times a month. Unremarkable. Logged between larger concerns. He reads the briefing 3 times. The moon is isolated. A single approach corridor, terrain that channels ground forces toward 3 specific choke points, and a separatist presence that the intelligence report. Sourced through a network that Palpatine's office has partial visibility into, he notes, describes as light. Light, he thinks about every word in the briefing that he would have chosen differently if he were designing a trap. He presents the mission to Anakin without editorializing. Anakin reads it once, quickly, and looks up. The approach corridor is a funnel, Anakin says. Yes, light separatist presence on a communications relay isn't worth 2 Jedi. No, so whoever filed this intelligence either doesn't know what they're looking at, Anakin says, slowly, or knows exactly what they're looking at. That is the correct analysis. Anakin sets the briefing down. He does not look frightened. He looks like what he is. A Jedi Knight on the edge of 20, who has been trained by a man carrying 2 lifetimes of war, assessing a situation with the calm that comes not from the absence of danger, but from having a complete understanding of it. We go anyway, Anakin says. We go anyway, he confirms. But we go as equals. Not as master and student. Not with me in front and you behind. He meets the boy's eyes directly. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Anakin understands. He has always understood, beneath the surface of the teacher-student dynamic they have maintained, because the Order requires a legible structure. He has always understood what they actually are to each other, which is something the Order doesn't have a clean category for. We go as 2 Skywalkers, Anakin says, quietly. He doesn't correct the name. He should. Technically, Obi-Wan Kenobi is the name on every document, every mission record, every citation in the Order's archive. It is the name he has worn for 22 years of this second life. But Anakin said 2 Skywalkers, and what he feels in the silence after it is not the urge to correct. They file the mission acceptance that evening. The transport leaves at dawn. Somewhere on Coruscant, in a private channel that runs through no log network, a hologram informs 2 of the most dangerous beings alive that the targets have accepted the engagement. The trap closes. Morjone at dawn is the color of a bruise. The moon's atmosphere carries too much iron oxide in the upper particulate layer, which turns the sunrise into something between purple and brown, light that illuminates without warming. The terrain below the transport's approach is broken rock and shallow ravines, no vegetation, no water visible, a landscape that was never hospitable and has been made less so by the defensive emplacements the intelligence report described as light. There are 47 of them. He counts them on the descent sensor sweep and says nothing, because the number confirms what the briefing's careful language was designed to obscure, and because Anakin is already counting beside him and arrives at the same number 4 seconds later. Light presence, Anakin says. Relatively speaking. The clone squad behind them, 12 men, good soldiers. Veterans of 3 campaigns under a commander named Crest who has the specific competence of someone who has survived long enough to stop being surprised, makes no comment. They have learned, over 3 years of intermittent joint operations, that when Master Kenobi and Skywalker exchange observations in that particular register, it means the shape of the engagement is about to change, and they should check their equipment. They check their equipment. Dooku, Anakin says quietly. Not a question. He nods. Grievous, another nod. Anakin processes this with the stillness he has learned to produce in the seconds before combat. Not the stillness of suppression, but of organization. Everything that isn't immediately useful filed somewhere it won't interfere. Then he says, simply, good. The landing zone is a plateau 2 kilometers north of the relay station. Defensible on 3 sides. Open on the 4th to the ravine network the briefing's maps identified as the primary approach corridor. They set down fast, and Crest has the squad deployed in a perimeter before the ramp fully extends. He stands at the plateau's southern edge and looks at the terrain. The ravines channel toward the relay in exactly the way the briefing implied. A funnel that compresses any advancing force into a predictable line, eliminates flanking options, and deposits whoever survives the approach into a kill zone in front of the station's main entrance. The emplacements he counted on descent are positioned to cover every meter of that approach. This is not a communications relay defense. This is a designed killing ground, built for specific targets, and the specific targets are standing on a plateau looking at it. "Commander Crest," he says. Crest appears at his shoulder. "Sir, your squad holds this plateau. Nothing comes up the north face without your knowing it. You do not advance into the ravines regardless of what you hear from that direction. Is that clear?" Crest reads the terrain for 3 seconds. He is a good enough soldier to understand what he's being told and why. "Clear, sir. If we are not back in 4 hours, you extract. Full retreat, no recovery mission." That is a direct order. A pause. "Understood." He turns to Anakin. Anakin has his saber on his belt and his sleeves pushed to the elbow, and the expression of someone who is completely ready, and has been ready since the transport left Coruscant. "Ready when you are." They go into the ravines alone. The ambush springs at the first choke point, which he expected, and involves 36 battle droids in coordinated crossfire positions, which he also expected, and lasts 40 seconds, which is perhaps slightly better than expected. He moves the way he has always moved in this body, Gemso's weight and commitment, Soresu's economy, the two forms blended across 22 years into something that belongs to neither tradition and both. He doesn't parry, he redirects. Each deflection feeds directly into the next offensive movement, the blade never stopping, never wasting position, covering angles with the minimum motion necessary, and no more. Beside him, Anakin moves differently. He is faster, lighter on his feet, with Ataru's instinct for vertical space, and Xian's precision on deflection angles. Where Vader's style is a river, continuous, directional, finding the path of least resistance and carving through it. Anakin's is weather, unpredictable in its specifics and total in its coverage. 3 battle droids recalibrate their targeting to account for where he was and find him somewhere else entirely. They do not discuss what they're doing. They do not need to. There is a geometry to fighting alongside someone for 22 years, even in 2 different configurations. Even across a gap of identity that neither of them has ever fully named, and the geometry is in the body now, below conscious decision. He opens left without looking because he knows Anakin will close it. Anakin commits to an upward cut that leaves his flank exposed because he knows it won't be exposed for more than a quarter second. The choke point clears. They don't stop moving. Grievous finds them at the second ravine. He drops from the rock face above with the particular drama of a being who has 4 lightsabers and the aesthetic sensibility to deploy them all simultaneously, and the sound he makes landing on stone is the sound of metal on rock. Nothing organic in it. His cape settles. His 4 arms extend. 4 blades ignite in a wheel of color. 2 blue, 1 green, 1 yellow, harvested from Jedi he killed and carried as trophies, with a collector's pride. He looks at Anakin. Vader steps back. Anakin reads this immediately, not as abandonment, but as what it is. Permission. An assessment delivered without words. This is yours. You are ready. Take it. The fight between Anakin Skywalker and General Grievous lasts 6 minutes, and is, in Vader's experienced estimation, the finest combat performance he has ever witnessed from a body that young. Grievous opens with the 4-blade spinning offensive that has killed Jedi Masters, using his cybernetic speed and the disorienting geometry of 4 simultaneous attack vectors to overwhelm a single opponent's defensive capacity. Anakin doesn't try to defend against all 4. He picks 1 blade, commits to it completely, gets inside the rotation, and makes Grievous's own momentum into a liability. The spinning geometry that kills at distance becomes clumsy at close quarters, and Anakin is suddenly close quarters, inside the reach of 2 of the 4 arms, making the other 2 useless. Grievous reconfigures, splits to 2 blades, uses the freed arms for physical grappling. He is enormously strong, the body all reinforced alloy, and he gets a grip on Anakin's forearm that would break bone in a normal human and tries to. Anakin goes with the throw instead of against it. Uses the momentum, lands, redirects it into a force-assisted roll that deposits him 6 feet away, already facing back. His forearm is bruised to the bone, and he doesn't favor it. Third configuration. Grievous, for the first time in the engagement, pauses. He is recalculating. The pause lasts 2 seconds. Anakin closes the distance in 1. The disarm is precise, a diagonal cut that takes 2 of the 4 sabers at their hilts, simultaneous. A movement that requires knowing exactly where both weapons will be in the same instant. And Anakin knows. And the blades hit the rock and go dark. A force push, concentrated, puts Grievous back against the ravine wall hard enough that the stone cracks behind him. Grievous slumps. Alive, the chest plate has taken damage from the impact, the telltale wheeze of a compromised respiratory system audible even from 20 feet. Anakin looks at him. He shakes his head once. Alive, Anakin steps back. His breathing is elevated, and his forearm is going to be spectacular colors by morning, and his face carries the clean, open expression of someone who has just done something completely, and knows it. Vader binds Grievous in cable restraints from the supply pack and does not tell him he did well because Anakin already knows, and compliments from him in combat moments tend to produce insufferable confidence in the following week's training. He is quietly, completely proud. Dooku is waiting at the relay station. He is not positioned for ambush. He is standing in the open, in front of the station's main entrance, with his curved hilt held loosely at his side, and the specific composure of a man who has made peace with the shape of the next few minutes. The remaining battle droids are powered down around him in neat rows, which is either respect for the nature of the coming engagement, or a calculation that they would be unhelpful. He looks at Vader with the particular attention of a man who has been studying a problem for 3 years. "You fight nothing like Obi-Wan Kenobi," Dooku says. "No," he agrees. "I've been trying to understand that for some time. I imagine." Dooku looks at Anakin briefly, with something more complicated than assessment, something almost like recognition, though of what is hard to name. Then back to him. "Shall we?" The fight is different from Grievous. Dooku does not rush. He never rushed. His form too, Makashi, the duelist's form, elegant and economical and devastatingly precise, is built on the assumption that 2 skilled opponents circling each other will eventually reveal the difference in their quality, and that patience is the mechanism by which the better duelist finds the opening. He does not give him the circle. He moves Dooku backward from the first exchange, not with power but with commitment, closing the distance Makashi needs to function, making the elegant footwork irrelevant by refusing to stand at the range where it works. Dooku adjusts. He adjusts again. For 3 minutes the engagement is genuinely even. 2 of the finest combatants alive. Fighting without performance, without the flourishes that dueling tradition layers over real violence. Then Dooku finds what he's looking for. Not a gap in technique. A gap in intent. He pulls back from an exchange and reads, in a single moment of force attunement, what Vader already knows, that this man is not trying to kill him. Is capable of it. Has been capable of it since the first exchange. But is not trying to. The saber drops, not from Vader's strike. Dooku releases it himself. Steps back, holds both empty hands slightly away from his body. "You could have ended this 2 minutes ago," Dooku says. "Yes, why didn't you?" He looks at Dooku, former Jedi Master, Sith apprentice, a man who chose power over institution for reasons that were not entirely wrong. Following a master who used those reasons like a blade. A man who has just fought a battle that Sidious designed for him to lose. "Because I've seen what killing a disarmed man costs," he says. "I won't watch it happen again." Something moves across Dooku's face. Old, considered, the expression of a man arriving at a conclusion he has been avoiding. "He sent us here to die," Dooku says. Quiet, flat, not a question, not a complaint. A statement of fact, finally looked at directly. Yes, Dooku picks up his hilt from the ground, holds it out, handle first. "I have information," he says, "that I believe you already possess. But I suspect you need it on record." His eyes are steady. "I want to give it to you on record." He takes the hilt, Then let's get your statement recorded, he says, before anyone changes their mind. They find Commander Crest exactly where he left him. The plateau. The squad. Everyone present, everyone intact. The north face uncontested because nothing came up it. Crest looks at the two of them, at Grievous in restraints, at Dooku walking under his own power with his hands visible, and his face produces the expression of a professional soldier processing a significant gap between the briefing and the outcome. He says nothing. He issues the recall signal and begins preparing for extraction. Anakin comes to stand beside him at the plateau's edge, looking out over the bruise-colored terrain in the early afternoon light. Neither of them speaks for a moment. 2 Skywalkers, Anakin says finally. 2 Skywalkers. He agrees. The extraction ship breaks through the iron-colored clouds from the north, running lights steady, right on schedule, and somewhere in transit between this moon and the core, a recorded statement begins its journey toward people who have the authority to act on it. Dooku's confession reaches the Council in 14 hours. Not through back channels. Not through the careful, deniable routing of information that Coruscant's political architecture usually requires. Through a recorded transmission, time-stamped and witnessed by Commander Crest and 6 clone troopers, filed simultaneously with the Jedi Council, the Senate Intelligence Committee, and 3 senior senators whose institutional independence from the Chancellor's office, Vader, has been quietly cultivating for 2 years precisely for a moment like this one. Palpatine receives the news of its existence before any of those bodies have finished reading it. He knows, because he can feel it, the pressure shift again, the same one he felt 6 days ago, but inverted now. Moving in the other direction, something that has been building for 22 years contracting toward a single point. He contacts Anakin through their bond and says 4 words. It is time now. They go together. This is the detail that matters most. In the end, not the outcome, which the Force has been building toward since a reactor core on the 2nd Death Star and a young man who refused to let go of his father's hand, but the configuration. 2 people walking down the same corridor toward the same door. Not a master pulling a student behind him. Not a student arriving alone in the dark to be told his wife will die and offered the one thing that will save her. 2 people. Side by side. The thing that could never exist in the original arrangement of events. The Chancellor's office is as he remembers it. The curved windows. The desk positioned to convey the specific authority of a man at the center of everything, with the city spread below him like evidence of his importance. The afternoon light comes through the transparasteel at an angle that should make the room feel open. Palpatine is standing behind the desk when they enter. He has not attempted to flee. He is not surrounded by guards. He is simply standing, with his hands folded in front of him and his public face fully assembled. The grandfatherly warmth, the measured concern, the expression of a man receiving troubling visitors with patience and institutional gravity. The public face lasts approximately 4 seconds after the door closes. Then, Darth Sidious looks at them from behind it and doesn't bother with the mask anymore. I wondered, he says. How long? You've known since the Opera House. Vader says. You've been buying time. As have you. The warmth is gone. What replaces it is not rage. Sidious doesn't rage, doesn't posture, doesn't waste energy on theatrics when the room has no audience he needs to manage. What replaces it is the cold, absolute attention of the most dangerous mind alive, running its final calculation. The difference is that you had a specific destination. I had only a strategy. Your strategy failed, Anakin says beside him. Sidious looks at Anakin with the expression of a man examining a piece of work that didn't develop as intended. Yes, he says thoughtfully, you were supposed to be so much more useful than this. I know, Anakin says. I read Dooku's confession. The calculation completes. Sidious moves. The lightning comes from both hands simultaneously, and it comes not at Vader, not at the obstacle, not at the known quantity, but at Anakin. The specific targeting is intentional and precise. Kill or maim the boy. Collapse the foundation. Reconstitute the leverage from grief. The same lever. The only one that ever worked. He steps in front of it. Not with the lightsaber. with his body. He gets between Anakin and the strike with the specific economy of a man who has been planning this contingency since the moment he understood what Palpatine would attempt when cornered. And he channels the lightning through himself the way a ground rod channels a storm, not absorbing it exactly, not deflecting it, but accepting the full force of it and refusing to fall. It costs him. Considerably, the pain is clean and total, and he has felt it before, not this version but its ancestor, on a second Death Star from these same hands, and his body knows the shape of it. He stays on his feet through an act of will that has nothing to do with the Force, and everything to do with 22 years of deciding, one choice at a time, what he is willing to spend himself on. Palpatine pours power into it. His face in this moment is nothing from the public record, stripped down, ancient, carrying the full weight of a darkness that has survived 1,000 years by moving from host to host and calling it a dynasty. He holds. His knees don't touch the floor. Then, the lightning stops. Not because Palpatine withdraws it. Because Anakin Skywalker, 20 years old, whole, uncorrupted, fighting not from rage or desperation or the terrible arithmetic of loss, but from the clean and grounded decision of a man protecting someone he loves, Anakin has crossed the room. The disarm is precise. Two-handed, economical, the movement of someone who has internalized everything his master spent 22 years teaching him about ending things without wasting motion. Palpatine's control of the lightning breaks as the focus required to maintain it fractures. He staggers. For the first time in perhaps 30 years, Darth Sidious staggers. 3 Jedi Masters enter through the doors behind them. Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, Shaq T, summoned an hour ago, positioned in the corridor with recorded warrants and instructions to wait for the signal. The signal was always going to be the lightning stopping. Vader gave them that specific cue because he knew, with the certainty of a man who has studied this entity across 2 lifetimes, that Sidious would not be able to resist using it. Palpatine looks at the room. He looks at Anakin, at the Masters in the doorway, at the warrant being read by Mace Windu in the steady voice of a man who has been waiting his entire career to say these particular words. He makes one final calculation. He reaches for the lightning again. Anakin's blade finds his guard hand first. It is not a killing strike. It is not designed to be. It removes Palpatine's capacity to generate the Force lightning and leaves him alive, standing, bleeding, and completely without options, in a room full of witnesses and active recordings and 3 armed Jedi Masters in the doorway. Sidious looks at the hand, then at Anakin. "You should have come to me alone," he says. Quietly, without anger, the tone of a man noting a technical error. "I know," Anakin says. "That's why I didn't." The arrest takes 11 minutes. The trial takes 4 months. The evidence is, by the standards of Republic jurisprudence, overwhelming. The recorded testimony. The Kamino clone army's chain of command traced to Sidious's private accounts. Dooku's full deposition. The financial architecture of the separatist movement unwound by a Senate committee that works with the specific, energized efficiency of a body that has just discovered it was being puppeted and would like very much to prove it can govern itself. Palpatine is convicted on 43 counts. The Clone Wars end not with an armistice, but with a collapse, the separatist leadership. Stripped of its hidden patron, fractures within 6 weeks into component grievances, most of which turn out to be negotiable. The Republic negotiates them, slowly, imperfectly, with the grinding institutional dignity of a democracy that has remembered it, is 1. The Jedi Order stands. 11 years later, on a Tuesday afternoon in the garden of a house in the Naboo Lake country, Vader sits on a bench in the sun and watches 2 children chase something through the grass. They are 4 years old. Both of them. A boy and a girl, dark-haired, shrieking at each other with the complete commitment of people for whom the distance between joy and outrage is approximately 3 seconds and thoroughly navigable. The girl is faster. The boy is louder. They are, in his assessment, completely themselves, which is the thing he most wanted for them. Luke catches whatever they were chasing and holds it up in triumph. Leia immediately argues that she caught it first. Across the garden, Padme looks up from the document she's reading and exchanges a glance with Anakin, who is standing by the door with a cup of tea and the expression of a man who is embarrassingly happy and has completely stopped being embarrassed about it. He raises the cup slightly, in Vader's direction. Acknowledgement. Gratitude. The gesture of someone who has not forgotten what it cost to arrive here and doesn't intend to. He nods back. His hands, in the afternoon light, are an old man's hands now, lined, spotted at the knuckles. They shook, briefly, for about a week after Palpatine's lightning, and then stopped, and have been steady since. He looks at them the way he looked at them in the generator complex on Naboo. 22 years ago, when they were young and unscarred and he was orienting himself in a body that wasn't his, and a life he hadn't yet understood he'd been given. The same hands. The work they have done in between is not a clean ledger. He knows that. He has never asked for a clean ledger, only for enough time to make the next right choice, and the one after that. And to trust that the accumulation of right choices is what second chances are actually for. Leia takes the thing out of Luke's hand and runs. Luke chases her, already laughing. He does not save the galaxy, in the end, by destroying his enemy. He saves it by making sure the boy he once was never needed saving at all. The boy grew up whole. The boy is standing across a garden with a cup of tea, watching his children run in the sun, on a planet that is still green. He closes his eyes. He breathes. The light finds his face, warm and unhurried, and he lets it. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.